Welcome everybody to the Wood and Water, Sand and Stream, a celebration of 30 years of land protection in Rensselaer County. My name's Christina Younger. I'm the president of the board. The basic agenda is we're going to do a quick run through of our business meeting, break for dinner, and then come back and celebrate both our Volunteer of the Year, our Conservation Leader of the Year, and 30 years of work of the Rensselaer Land Trust. Our first order of business is to thank a very special person. Kathy Jimeno is retiring after 16 years as Rensselaer County Executive. She was born and raised in Troy, and she has a long history of public service for the City of Troy, the New York State Finance Committee, the county legislature, as well as her 16-year run as county executive. She is known for her efficient management, high standards, and sensitivity to community needs. The Rensselaer Land Trust and the environmental community as a whole of Rensselaer County knows that we could always depend on her for that most important letter of support when we were looking for grant money, to show up when there was a new preserve to dedicate and celebrate, and to help wherever she could. The most recent example is the county assistance that they are providing to the village of Valley Falls to advance their dream of a Hoosick Riverfront Park. Her support of the Dyke and Pond Environmental Center has been steadfast over her history, and we want to ask her to come up to the stage.
Thank you very much, Christina. That is beautiful, and I hope that everybody got a chance to see it, but if not, I'll turn it around when I'm done speaking so you can see it. It's really very gorgeous. And this was fun. I remember this day distinctly because the night before we had celebrated my granddaughter's 6th birthday. And it was a lovely, balmy evening. We were all in short-sleeve shirts. And the next morning we woke up and it was freezing cold and teeming rain. In Troy, it was teeming rain. My other daughter, who bought a house in Grafton not 3 months before, was building a snowman. So this is what it's like to live in Rensselaer County, and one of the things that makes Rensselaer County so very special. And another thing that makes the county so very special is this organization. When I think about as Christina said, all the different openings that we've been to together and seen such beautiful parts of the county, it's really amazing. And we're not talking about just outside of the city of Troy, if you will, where you might expect to see beautiful areas in nature, but right here in Troy, too, where we can enjoy it. And that comes from all the hard work, and I so appreciate that and congratulate all of you on that. I also think about the fact that if it were not for this organization, how would people know where it is that they can go and enjoy the great outdoors in this county? Granted, there's a lot of open space, there's a lot of wooded area, there's a lot of beautiful territory to traverse if you're allowed to. But a lot of that land is held in private hands, and so it's not always open and available to everyone. But through your efforts, you have identified, you have preserved and conserved that land, so it is available to the general public, and told them about it so they can get out there and enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to having time to be able to do that. I see Pierce over here, and I told Pierce Hoyt one of the first things that I did when I decided to retire is I went out and bought a pair of hiking shoes. So now I'm ready. So thank you for making all this wonderful area available. And Christine, if I may, I would like to take the opportunity to present to you a certificate of congratulations upon the occasion of celebrating your 30th anniversary. And 30 years, if I may, just one more minute digress. I look back to see what was going on 30 years ago. Good Morning Vietnam was a big hit movie. Walk Like an Egyptian was a big hit song. And some of the books of the day included Misery by Stephen King, Beloved by Toni Morrison, and The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. There you go. Enjoy your evening, everyone.
Patrick Madden was elected mayor of Troy, running on a campaign dedicated to strengthening the city's neighborhoods, confronting the challenge of urban blight, improving city finances, and expanding economic opportunity. Before that, he had 30 years at the helm of the Troy Rehabilitation and Improvement Program, and as part of that, he was our landlord. Born and raised in Troy, he confided that what is now the Stollinson Preserve was his childhood woods where he explored and played. We're thrilled to have him join us. We were thrilled to have him join us this year at the cleanup of the Tomahawk Reservoir this year, as the pictures show. He not only showed up, he actually picked up trash. And we're very, very glad to have him here at our 30th celebration and welcome him to the stage at this point.
Thank you, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. Kathy Jimeno is a tough act to follow, both literally and figuratively. I never thought I would get into politics or elected office, but when I made that fateful decision, Kathy was my role model. Not only has she given so much over the past 16 years, but she's done it in such class and such style and for all the right reasons. Every one of my Democratic friends says, oh, that's the only Republican I've ever voted for. I mean, she has that sort of appeal, that sort of class. And I would just like you all one more time to give her a round of applause for 16 years of service. I'm going to try to get her to volunteer for the city of Troy now. So 30 years ago, I lived out in the town of Berlin, and I lived at the end of, what was that? There was a plank road, an old plank road that used to go up to Posingkill. And one day I was working out in the yard, and this guy comes just crashing out of the woods into our yard. It was Warren Broderick, an early member of the Land Trust. And he spent about 30 minutes with me talking about his vision for a land trust in Rensselaer County. And here it is 30 years later. It's hard to believe it's 30 years already, although I find myself saying that a lot these days about a lot of things. But it came to fruition. And all of these areas that have been preserved through the efforts, your efforts, and the Land Trust efforts, there's a lot of, it coincides with all the areas where I used to hang out when I was a kid. Of course, back then we were trespassing, and now these areas are open for public enjoyment. But it wasn't just in Troy. It was in Troy. It was out in Grafton. It was in Berlin. It was the Taconic Ridge. We used to hang out up there all the time. We camped out there every summer several times. These are beautiful, beautiful places in Rensselaer County. It adds to the vibrancy, the quality of life in this community, in this county. It's a real attraction, and it's important when we talk about attracting people to live here and the quality of life in this area. So I applaud you for all of your efforts to preserve these beautiful places so that we can all enjoy them without trespassing now. So again, thank you for all of your work. Thank you for 30 years, and congratulations on this anniversary. Thank you.
We are happy to present this slate of candidates for your consideration. Carl Sipper, for those of you who don't know who these people are, Carl Sipperly is a farmer in Hoosick. He's been on our board for well over a decade and agreed to go for another 2 years. Nick Conrad, former immediate past president, shows up in a whole lot of those slides in that rotating slideshow of their 30-year history. Bob Crowley, our treasurer. Tom Phillips, veterinarian and moss and fungi expert extraordinaire, leader of many, many wildflower hikes. David Gaskell, forest, master forester, donor of the initial parcel that started the Kinderhook Preserve and its most amazing steward today. And then there are 2 officer terms up. I'm up for another term of president, if you'll have me, and Paul Schroeder as secretary.
It takes a lot of work to keep this kind of an organization going behind the scenes, and I don't mean just organizing events like this, but day in, day out. And all I can say is I'll speak for myself and for everybody else up there that we love doing it. You know, it's I grew up in Hoosick Fall. In those days, you know, you didn't even think of being out. We were trespassing all the time. You know, you didn't even think about being outdoors. There wasn't any other option. And now times have changed, and it's so important for an organization like this to keep that kind of opportunity out there for our young people and our old people and our not so old people and the like. I was going to start with a little election humor, but I decided not to do that. I'll leave that to the experts at Saturday Night Live and Wait, Don't Tell Me. Those guys really know how to do that. So I'll just finish my report by saying that the slate of candidates presented here has been overwhelmingly reelected by the voters today, and I thank you very much.
This is one of my favorite slides to present every year. We started 3 years ago recognizing people who have supported the Land Trust continuously for a 10-year period or more, not just with money, but with volunteer time. This slate of new inductees into the Bluebird Society is 28 people, and it brings the total number of people who we have records of, because we chose 10 years because that's when we started computerizing the records. But that brings our total number of people who are part of the Bluebird Society who have been supporting the Land Trust for at least 10 years, up to 218 people. So you will recognize them. Hopefully they will be wearing their Rensselaer Land Trust pin. If you see the pin on someone, that means they're a Bluebird. So I would like to welcome this new group into the Bluebird Society, and we invite you all to join them. We keep records. And now we get to the fun part of the program. Marcy Steinberg and the Volunteer of the Year Award. We started this award last year when we did the math, and we realized that when we added in the value of volunteer time to what this land trust does, our budget doubled. And that is how important volunteers are to the lifeblood of this organization. And that's why we decided to create this Volunteer of the Year Award. And so who is more appropriate than Fran Egbert, the very first recipient of this award, to present to this year's winner, Marcy Steinberg. I'd like to call Fran and Sue up. But I also I have a special thing that I need to make sure I announce. Paul and Bernice Kessler from Boynton Beach, Florida, made a special donation to the Land Trust in honor of their very special daughter and how very, very deserving she is of this award.
So where does a great RLT volunteer come from? The Bronx? Really? The suburbs of Long Island? Uh-huh. That is where Marcy started her love of the outdoors, on the beaches of Long Island. And then at college in New Paltz, she started hiking and climbing the Shwangunks. In a very unlikely way, she fell in love with the byways of Rensselaer County as a nuts and bolts salesman, or saleswoman, I should say. Her career has spanned from reading disabilities teacher to a very long run as a speech pathologist and team leader at BOCES in Rensselaer County for 32 years, while raising 2 children, Jana and Justin, with her husband John, who's here, and Justin, in an old farmhouse in Taborton. She is surrounded by acres of blueberries. I won't tell you the story about how she burnt the place down to get them. And vegetable gardens. And those blueberries go to friends. You can go up there and pick them. They become blueberry cake. They become blueberry pie, and they become great blueberry wine. I first got to know Marcy as she was planning her retirement, and she said to me very clearly, I would love to help out at RLT work, but don't make me organize anything. I am done with that from work. So she put up posters. She baked for every event I asked. She did trail work every week, everywhere in Rensselaer County, and she showed up whenever she was needed. And then came the mushrooms. From the first mushroom walk with Sue Van Hook, she was literally hooked. What, free food in the woods? Fun to cook, lots of intellectual stimulation, and as she searched through books and took pictures and made drawings, and then the excitement of teaching others. Soon she was planning classes at all levels. She was planning walks in Rensselaer County. Of course, she is a superb organizer, keeping in contact with her participants and knowing most of them by name, exploring new venues, suggesting new classes to Sue. She's been doing this series for years, and in supporting the rest of the outings programs with the money that she's brought in. Marcy has brought her energy to every task, making weekly trail work a literal scream when she finds a new or much-loved mushroom on the trail. Cooking her Taborton blueberry cake for every preserve open, and now for every birthday of a trail crew member, maintaining the Facebook page for Friends of Cherry Plains State Park, and introducing friends and neighbors and anyone else who will listen to all of the new preserves in Rensselaer County. And beyond all that work that she has done, what I love best is following Marcy into the woods or in the water and sharing her joy in a new view, a new animal track, a flower, or God forbid, a new mushroom. The energy she brings to a ski on a 0-degree day, slogging through rain and fog, bushwhacking when you're lost and you don't know when you're going to get back, and the pleasure is still hers, and it's ours to have her. She is really a lesson that when you come to this work with a passion, you can develop the skills to do it very well. Congratulations, Marcy. And now Sue is going to join me. Sue Van Hook, who is Marcy's mentor.
As you all know, the woman being honored tonight is a fireball of energy and enthusiasm when it comes to learning about fungi. Marcy joined the Fun Gal Queendom about 5 years ago after coming on a mushroom foray that I led for the Land Trust. Often she can be found hiking in the mountains or roaming the woodlands on the plateau. Marcy has a natural affinity for mushrooms, and she keeps coming back for more. Accurately stated, she has organized 2 to 3 mushroom talks, walks, or forays for the Land Trust for the last 5 years, bringing her enthusiasm to all for learning about these organisms. I point to her as the perfect example in every workshop that I teach. I mention her as a perfect amateur mycophile who has taken it very seriously, and so much so that she has learned to identify and eat many dozens of species of mushrooms through practice. I also want to give her another award tonight, which I have nothing for other than words, and that is the Spore Printers Award. She really understood the value of spore printing, because until you know the spore print color of the fungi, you don't know the fungi. And you can only tell by spore printing. So I said, don't you send me any pictures without the spore print color. And she took it very seriously. Without Marcy's dedication to organizational leadership, I might have let go of leading these walks and talks for RLT years ago, because I have to travel about an hour every time. But it's Marcy who makes the events so easy because of her organization of taking the registrations, taking the payments, getting everyone there, and all I have to do is show up. And that's huge. That's huge. I wouldn't do it otherwise. So thank you for that. Marcy is very, very deserving of this award tonight, and I want it to be presented to her with so much love.
This is the Volunteer of the Year plaque that lives in the RLT office. You can see Fran and Mars.
Thank you, everyone. I have to tell this story. I was in Sinopee, New Hampshire when I got a phone call from Sally Lawrence. And the last time I talked to Sally was in May or June when she told me that Sage wasn't opening the library. And that's where my mushroom workshop was going to be. So we had a scurry, and she lovingly helped me get another room. But then when I got another call in August, right before my next mushroom workshop, I thought it was the same thing, so I just braced myself because I saw her name on my call. And then she was telling me this, I almost fell over. It was like I had no expectations, but all I can say is I love it. I enjoy Wednesday so much. It's just like I met the best people, some of my closest friends, and I just love everyone on Wednesdays. And now it's not work time, so we can really have fun now. And it's just so much fun. It's just like it's you guys all have to be retired and just enjoy it. And it's just I just love it. And then mushrooms, it's like it's just like I don't know. She's just awakened me. And I just love it. And now I've got all my friends here and all my trail crew. Wow, it's like, wow. And I would send her, and she was saying, well, yeah, you're right, it's good. And then my other trail crew actually will believe me, and we could eat them. And it's just, I can't tell you, I love finding all the great trails. I love making the trails. I love bringing my friends there to walk the trails. Great. And I love I just like appreciate everyone we work with, and I have to thank my husband for giving me he wants my saw. So I just thank you very much. It's really appreciated.
The Rensselaer Land Trust initiated the William Nemi Conservation Leadership Award in 2016 to honor major contributions to land conservation in Rensselaer County. To win this award, the recipient must be a leader who provides critical support to the mission and vision of the Rensselaer Land Trust and to the overall protection and preservation of the quality of life we have in Rensselaer County. Nick Conrad will now come to the stage and explain why David Hunt meets and exceeds this criteria.
As Christina mentioned, this award is awarded for contributions to land conservation, and I'll say that it's not just for the past year's work, but for contributions over many years, and it's not restricted to work done for the land trust, but for land conservation in the county in general. This award is nominated after our past president, Bill Nemi, who is in the audience tonight. Bill, can I ask you to come up and help me present the Bill Nemi Award for Conservation and Leadership? Bill was our first recipient last year, so I'm honored to have Bill help me with this presentation. Dr. David Hunt received his BS in botany from Cornell University and his doctorate from the University of Georgia in the late 80s. After a stint with a private environmental consulting firm, he worked for the New York office of the Nature Conservancy and then as an ecologist with the New York Natural Heritage Program, where he conducted extensive field work across the state, his biggest project researching high-quality ecological communities in the Adirondacks. So here are some photos of David in his days with the Natural Heritage Program. As you can see by the photo on the right, in his pursuit of ecological truth, David is not afraid to get some dirt under his fingernails. While working for the Nature Conservancy and the Natural Heritage Program, David also started to study the plants, animals, habitats, and ecology around his home in Grafton and in Rensselaer County in general. In 2001, David left the Natural Heritage Program to answer the call to act locally. He lives as sustainably as possible and works as an independent ecologist with a focus on Rensselaer County. David has been studying the flora, fauna, and ecology of Rensselaer County now for more than 25 years and is currently the leading expert on the county's plants, ecology, and natural areas. His knowledge is encyclopedic. He has extensive notes on hundreds of sites in the county, and he seems to know all the plants personally. I consider David the John Muir or the Henry David Thoreau of Rensselaer County. I've had the pleasure of being in the field with him often, and I never cease to be amazed by his powers of observation and plant identification. All David has to do is catch a glimpse of a leaf or a general shape of a plant, doesn't even have to be in flower, and he'll know what it is. He'll also know how rare or common it is, and if it's rare, he can tell you all the places it's found in the county. David is also fearless when it comes to documenting the natural history of the county. He'll walk out into wetlands and sink to his waist in muck with no second thoughts. He has explored caves, including one that requires crawling on your belly through an underwater stream. He got me to go through that once. He'll don a wetsuit to explore what's living under the surface of a pond or a stream. Well, being an expert is all well and good, but David, that's not enough. This is a conservation award, and we're honoring you today not only for the knowledge you've acquired on Rensselaer County's natural history, but for sharing and applying that knowledge to promote environmental understanding and for being a passionate advocate for conservation. David was doing this even back in 1998 when he prepared a map of the environmentally critical areas of the county for the Rensselaer County Environmental Management Council. In 2000, he prepared for RPI a document on the most important conservation areas of the county. Since then, he has regularly been asked to provide information to municipalities, landowners, and environmental organizations on the ecological significance of sites and on strategies to conserve them. Here are just a few examples. As an advisor to the Land Trust, David visits sites we're considering for protection and provides a report on their ecological resources and how significant they are in the context of the entire county. This information is a large part of the Land Trust decision as to whether to pursue a project. He has done particularly extensive research on our Kinderhook Preserve and our Young's Bog Preserve, enabling us to know the wide diversity of biological wealth we're protecting on those preserves. David lives on the Rensselaer Plateau and so has a special interest in that part of the county. He was asked by the Rensselaer Plateau Alliance to compile an ecological assessment, the ecological assessment section of the Rensselaer Plateau Regional Conservation Plan, in which he compiled comprehensive information on the plateau's biodiversity, intact natural landscapes, and most significant natural areas. As part of that effort, he pored over aerial photos and mapped the ecological communities on all 118,000 acres of the plateau. What that means is that for a third of the county, every acre is assigned by David to a specific vegetation or habitat type. That is a great accomplishment, and very few places in the state or the country have that kind of detailed work. Over the last year, David has expanded on his plateau work as he prepared biodiversity and ecological information and map data for all of Rensselaer County as part of the Land Trust in progress Rensselaer County Conservation Plan. The plan will use David's research heavily in identifying the places in the county that have the highest priority for protection. Not only will David's expertise greatly benefit the plan, but now much of the information he's collected over the past 25 years have been converted from paper files to digital form, helping to ensure it will be available for future generations to learn from. David has been asked by towns to assess ecological impacts of proposed projects. For example, when the Northeast Direct Pipeline was proposed to run across southern Rensselaer County, David was asked by the town of Nassau to document the sensitive and rare habitats along the route. His research was part of the case that local towns made in opposition to the pipeline. David also generously shares his expertise with the public. He leads outings to special habitats for both the Land Trust and the Plateau Alliance, including a series for the Land Trust to bogs in the county that have floating mats. And for example, here's David on the right. He's at the Cranberry Bog in Grafton, and on the upper left, he's at the Land Trust Young's Bog Preserve in Sand Lake. He has given much of his own time to walk parcels of land with their owners, showing them what plants and animals live there and sharing information on how to be good stewards of these special resources. Knowledge leads to understanding, which leads to caring about the land, which leads to working to protect it. If effective land conservation depends on knowing the land and the nature that lives upon it, and if it depends on sharing that knowledge with the people who own, manage, care about, and want to protect that land, then David Hunt has been and continues to be a key contributor to land conservation in Rensselaer County. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Rensselaer Land Trust, it is my great pleasure to present the second annual William Nemi Conservation Leadership Award to our friend, David Hunt.
I'm not as spontaneous as Marcy, so I wanted to share some words that I learned with everybody. So thank you to the Land Trust for this unexpected honor. It's an affirmation for me to keep going forward with hard work to help conservation efforts throughout the county. And Nick said it would be okay if I took a couple minutes to tell you a little bit more about the history of my work with the Land Trust and my ongoing efforts. So I wanted to share some of that with you. So I moved to the Rensselaer Plateau of this county in 1990. And as Nick said, I worked with the Nature Conservancy and the Natural Heritage Program as both a botanist and ecologist. And it was at that time that I started gathering information about important natural features of the county, borrowing from the methods of those organizations. So that ongoing effort, I would eventually come to call the Rensselaer County Biodiversity Green Print Project. And its mission was essentially to design an arc for this county for its native species. A lot of my early information came from people of this organization that led field trips countywide that allowed me to get into sites I had never seen before. Many of those people, I don't think any of them are here today. They included Warren Broderick, Norton Miller, Dory Cox, Stan Bunce, and Kate Hubbs. So through those trips, I met many landowners of the county who in turn gave me permission to explore their lands and waters, and I just keep gathering more and more information. The more landowners I meet and invite me to their property. As Nick said, I left the Nature Conservancy about 2000 to become self-employed to shift my work locally, especially when the mountains, lakes, and forests in my own town of Grafton started getting overdeveloped, and I was concerned about, helping things across the state when my own neighborhood seemed to be collapsing around me. So one of the things I started doing was leading field trips to raise awareness of these sites. And one of the mechanisms for that is called the Capital District Friday Field Group. And 2 additional Rensselaer Land Trust staff were key players in that. There's Tom Phillips, who's in the audience now, and Bob Ingalls was part of that group too. And the Land Trust started inviting me to lead more walks, including the bog trips. I also did a deep ecology walk. And then after the Rensselaer Plateau Alliance formed, as Nick said, I was heavily involved with a conservation plan for that region, and very happy to do that and get all my information on maps. And everything culminated this past winter when the Land Trust did a similar plan countywide. So I'm happy to have that information be used by the public. So going forward from here, I'm still looking for additional places that I've identified from air photos as being important, but I want to get on the ground and work with landowners of those areas to further explore these places, whether they be lakes or rivers, mature forests, deep forest interior areas, rocky summits, tidal areas, caves, and unusual wetland types. I hope to continue my role as an ecological advisor to the Land Trust, especially assessing places that Paul Schroeder and Nick Conrad think it would be helpful for me to help the organization. I also want to start, hope to do more workshops that I've been doing outside of the county. At my table is Bonnie Hoag, who runs the Dayanandahoa Wildlife Sanctuary in Washington County. I've been working with her 15 years doing stream restoration projects, removing invasives. I've been restoring old growth forests on their sanctuary. And I want to do more of that in this county if I'm invited to work on some of the preserves. And on the next few months, I'm going to try to wrap up my large technical report for the Rensselaer Conservation Plan. All this is unpaid, essentially, to fulfill my obligations to that plan. So although I've been self-employed now for 17 years, I've done much of my work with little or no pay. Most recently, I've had to supplement my income with several farm and landscaping jobs just to make ends meet. And I hope to figure out eventually how to make a living wage doing my ecology work here. And I welcome any help going forward doing that. So thanks again to the Land Trust, and I wish you well in the next 30 years with your work.
Now we come to the part of the program where we recognize the people who 30 years ago had the foresight to come together and say, we can do more for land conservation in Rensselaer County. What you see up there is what was our original name and logo, the Rensselaer-Taconic Land Conservancy, and a list of the founders who were on that document of the Articles of Incorporation. Would those who are on that list, who are here in the audience, which I know include Lisa, Roger, John, thank you.
Well, for those who don't know me, I'm John Munn. I was involved in the Land Trust since, '87 or so. I was sitting. Those of you who don't know, Kathy Gimeno used to be the Director of Central Data Processing at Rensselaer County, and I was one of her employees. I was the staff working in the computer center at night. And as I was there, I received a call from Warren Broderick, and he said, hey, how would you like to be involved in starting a land trust? And I knew what a land trust was because I was familiar with the Nature Conservancy, but I didn't know why he'd want to get involved in another one. And he said, well, this would be local. I said, okay, I'm game. So I had some background and experience in bookkeeping, so I ended up becoming treasurer for about maybe 10 to 15 of the next 20 years. One of those jobs that nobody ever wants and you can't get out of, really. But it was okay. So for about 20 years, I was the treasurer, and I took on the role. And it was okay. I didn't get involved in the outings because I had other things to do. And I spent many a night in the Rensselaer Land Trust offices located in the Melville room of the Lansingburg Library, which we paid, I think, $125 a month rent for. You know, and that was after it went up from 35. So many nights I'd be there working until dawn, then basically doing our IRS 990 forms and New York Charities Registration Bureau forms, and learning how to do nonprofit accounting. The years went by, and then I just got better at it. Sooner or later, I got replaced. I know Brian Zweig replaced me, Jeff Paulus replaced me, a lot of other people had fallen into the position, and it's a job that somebody can do, and you know, if you just plug away at it. In the early days, I remember one of the events we held was a hike-a-thon. Lisa Burr remembers this. It was the Hike for Open Space. It was held on the Taconic Crest Trail. And one of the anecdotal stories I have is beforehand, I was very concerned with the health and safety of people who would be hiking on the hike-a-thon. And one of the things we had to do was provide for their safety somehow. And those are the days before cell phones. So I went out and hiked the trail. We got a bunch of Motorola radios to cover the bases of emergency communications. And about a week or two beforehand, I walked the trail with my young German short-hair pointer, Wolfgang, who some of you may remember. Those are dogs with boundless energy. They need to get their energy out. They run forever. And he and I walked the trail. It got dark. It was getting towards evening, and I was realized it was a little too long to walk back to the parking lot on Route 2. So we walked down a 9-mile right-of-way, went into Pulteney, Vermont. I think it's Pulteney, near where the Greyhounds used to race, and found somebody who was willing to let me use their phone, and because those were the days before cell phones, and called my wife, and she came and rescued me. And she drove me back to the parking lot, and Wolfgang crashed on the way home. It was probably, what was it, like about 10 miles maybe? I don't know, it was up and down, and I got to see the snow hole for the first time, and the corner where New York, Vermont, and Massachusetts come together. we had a lot of fun in the early days. There were a lot of things we struggled with. Fundraising has always been one of those activities. You see Natural Areas books. We have note cards. We have posters. We struggled. Shirts. Shirts. Thank you, Roger. If you'll excuse me a second, I'm going to disrobe partially. Would you hold the microphone?
Okay. The Hulk is coming.
I think I purchased maybe the last few remaining size large. We also bought shirts for little kids, and we had those in inventory forever. Couldn't get rid of them. In order to get rid of them, I'm treasurer. I've got to keep them on the books. Got to keep them on the books, and I can't get rid of them. And they're there every year. They're a pain. And they had to be counted. So, and anything that's sold out of inventory, you had to write off the cost. So you had to take the cost out of it. It's not worth the aggravation. So I bought the remaining inventory of shirts at cost. The Land Trust broke even on them, and I gave them away to the Lansingburg Boys and Girls Club. There might be kids running around right now with shirts with beavers on them. If you see any, they were kind of yellowish beige shirt, and they had neon stenciled logo on them. So if you see anybody, those are ours. Anything else? I can't remember. We had a good time, though. There were a lot of activities, and we ended up growing. I think one of the biggest efforts we had was getting the organization accredited. There were many long nights working through policies and procedures to work through the accreditation process. Roger was a part of that. I encourage anybody to get involved if you have an interest. I'm going to close, and I'd like to read something that Bill Nemi wrote. Now, this was 10 years ago in the, if I may, Bill, this is something Bill Nemi wrote, and I saw it in the 2007 20-year anniversary newsletter. It was the annual report. Let's see if I can find it. Bill wrote, "I look forward to getting together with old friends and perhaps meeting new people who share our love of life and nature. Though my mental list of those I wish were still here grows longer each year, I miss my parents, my brother, and my sister. I miss my former partners in open space protection, Glenn Martin, James Atkinson, Reg Sirocco, Bert Miller, and others like Stan Bunce, whose health has removed him from our circle, but not from our thoughts. At this time, I celebrate with friends who are with us now and who have taken up the cause where the above mentioned have left off. Each member of our family lost seems to welcome a new member valuable to us and to our efforts." That was from Bill Nemi. In addition to those names, we add Dory Cox, Bob Ingalls, and Stan Bunce and his wife Lillis. I really appreciate the sentiment, and I'm proud to be with the group of people who are here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to use my few brief minutes here simply to recognize 4 individuals that played key roles in this organization. And I don't think any of them are here. The first is a name that's come up several times already, Warren Broderick. Warren was truly the force that got this organization going by actually soliciting the early members to come together for a meeting. And even though at times people had odd interactions with Warren, he put much of his life into the organization, especially in the first 10 years. A second name that John just mentioned is an old colleague of mine, Reginald Sirocco. Reg was an aquatic ecologist at RPI, and he was responsible for a lot of the early technology development for the organization, GIS in its infancy, and a lot of digitization when it was quite a chore. Reg passed away untimely in 1999. My third name is John Middlebrooks. His name is on the program. He was our first director. We went for almost 20 years with no paid staff. John came along. John was a true professional with background in land protection. He really got the organization kind of shaped up and pointed us toward accreditation. He was a major element in the development of the Rensselaer Land Trust. And last but not least, Gary Brown is a name that certainly should be mentioned. Apart from his extensive contributions to events like this, Gary became treasurer of the organization at a very critical time. And those who have been in organizations where the treasuries become a problem will know what I'm referring to. So those are just four names of the many that I could talk about, but it's been special working with all these folks. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo Roger's remembrance of some of those names, and Warren is not here tonight, but I will echo that Warren was the driving force, and Warren really motivated all of us original founders to get together. So Warren, I hope your ears are ringing because we're talking about you a lot. And if any of you went on those early outings in the early days, you probably remember Warren speeding ahead in the car and going so fast that nobody could ever keep up with him. So we had to really talk to him about slowing down in the car. But I also remember in those early days, a small group of us talking about land protection, and one of the visions was really connecting trails and recreation and talking about the plateau and connecting the state-held properties and county, Dyke and Pond Environmental Education Center. And at that time, I just felt like, well, sure, we can work on some land protection projects, but that was really just a dream. That was a dream that was going to happen in another lifetime, certainly not in my lifetime. And I'm happy to say that with all of, the hard work of the Land Trust, that I can actually start seeing that might be a possibility of that actually becoming accomplished in the near future. So with a lot of people and a lot of people working on that. And I also will just mention one other thing that I think about a lot from the early days is the outings program. And as an environmental educator up at Dyke and Pond Environmental Ed Center, I know how important it is to get people outdoors and really connecting people, because it's great to protect land, but unless you have people appreciating the value of that and getting out and really enjoying it, you don't have that heart and that emotion that's attached to it. So in my work that I do, I see so much research coming through these days on the importance of connecting kids and people to the outdoors. And it's not just kids. It's important for kids to be out there. It's important to have them have unstructured playtime. And all the research is pointing to that it increases creative thinking and problem solving and test scores and all of that stuff. But it's also for the adults and families. And it's so important as we go towards the future to unplug and connect to all of these great, wonderful, special places that we have in the county. And the outings program, which we started in the very beginning, I'm really proud and really happy to say and see that is still going, because that, I think, is a really, really crucial job and role that you guys do from the Land Trust. So it might have been a few voices that started the organization, but it's really wonderful to see many, many voices and faces and all of these people really working hard and doing such a great job. So I have been honored to be a part of it, and it's great to see it going forward. Thanks.
This is a list of the every president in the history of the Land Trust in chronological order. With those who are here, please come on up to the stage. We found out at the last minute Peg couldn't join us. I, for one, I don't know when term limits for presidents came in, but I'm glad they're there now. So whichever one of you did that, thank you.
I'm Brian Zweig, and I first want to thank Christina and everybody that's been connected with tonight's event. It's really great to get all of us back together here. And hearing John Munn speak reminded me of our board meetings and how long they used to be. But as always with John, at the end, he really had a great point to make. And remembering those folks and reading that passage really brought back a lot of fond memories of some folks who are no longer with us. And I was lucky enough to be president for 8 years, and I think my greatest accomplishment was finding my replacement and convincing Glenn Martin to take over as president. The organization was a lot different then. We had no staff, no money. It was just a small group of volunteers who, were trying to get everything done on their own. And it was a very difficult time for the organization. We were really at a crossroads that we had to decide what we wanted to do, whether we wanted to continue to go forward in that limited way or to take some very risky steps and hire staff, and had to deal with a lot of challenges with our board as well. And Glenn was a dedicated, intelligent, hardworking, and person who was very passionate about the mission of this organization. And she was willing to step up at a point where really no sane person would really want to get involved. And she was willing to do that. She steered the organization through some very difficult times. We had to remove a board member. We had to take a very big financial risk in hiring the executive director. And as a result of her efforts, what you see here today in this organization is come to pass. And it wouldn't have happened without somebody like Glenn who was willing to step up at that time. And we lost Glenn far too early. Fortunately, Bill Nemi was willing to take over at that point and continue that work. But I think in remembering Glenn, what's important to note is that one person who was willing to step up and get involved in a critical time was able to make an enormous difference to this organization, and it can happen to any organization. So I just encourage everybody, if you feel strongly about an organization like this or any other one, get involved, and you really can have a huge impact, as everything here tonight is showing. So thanks again to everybody for the opportunity.
I want to say Peg Olson called me today and said she wanted to be here, but she couldn't get out of an engagement, and she'll try and be here the next time we have a meeting. But she wants to send her regards. Now, one of the things that I ask myself, and you probably have the same thing on your minds, is whose idea was it to start the Rensselaer Land Trust? As you look at that list, usually an idea comes from one person's mind. And so I know that Peg Olson and Warren Broderick bought a piece of property up near Dyken Pond, and they wanted to preserve it. And they didn't know how to do it. Peg said to me there wasn't another organization at the time that could take on that piece of property. It turns out there were two other small land trusts in Rensselaer County, but they folded while we were forming, and so we actually inherited a couple easements from these other land trusts that gave up. So land trusts don't form and stay in business, and so it's unusual to have a land trust be all volunteer for 20 years and succeed and do all the things that we did. And I asked Warren, I said, did you come up with the idea of forming a land trust? And Warren said, no, it was really a group effort, a group idea. And I said, well, I suspect it must be Peg. So I called Peg and said, Peg, did you come up with the idea of starting a land trust? And she says, I may have. I probably did. And I asked, well, where were you and what day was it? So it was October 13th, 1987, I think. And she said or actually Warren told me, she said they were at a meeting at some pub, and then Warren told me they were meeting at the pub that was a predecessor to Brown's, which is sort of kind of interesting, is that the whole thing started next door here. And they decided to, at that time, organize and recruited to list the people here. James was a fellow graduate. Peg Olson was a graduate student in environmental science, got a master's degree in environmental science, and was now starting her doctoral program in ecological economics, which I was going to Google that before I came tonight, so I could tell you what it was. I can't. But anyways, it's probably the merging of the economic benefits of good ecology, I would say, is probably a good explanation. But Peg was already devoting her life to preserving natural areas. And not only was she concerned with Rensselaer County and started this idea of having a land trust in Rensselaer County, and it eventually covered all of Rensselaer County. And so here we have an idea that was conceived. You might say the conception for the land trust was in Peg Olson's mind, and then she recruited, and of course Warren was, I would say, the energy behind the land trust. And he's a behind-the-scenes person. He's not even here tonight. He doesn't like to be the center of attention, I don't think. He's somewhat of a recluse, but his devotion is historical preservation. And his life. He worked for the New York Archives until he retired, and in his spare time, he wrote dossiers and portfolios of historic people in Rensselaer County, of historic places. And actually, we have some of his dossiers in our office. We had them for sale, and even on the website, if you dig down on the website, you can find portfolios on some significant people, significant places, on the canal locks in the area. And Warren's was sort of a botanist. He was an amateur botanist, and he knew a lot about the trees in Rensselaer County and flowers, and a lot of the slides that I guess not too many people, even in our organization, know that most of the 2x2 slides in our file collection in the office were taken by Warren. So if you see a Kodachrome 2x2 slide of some natural area, it's probably taken by Warren. And Warren was a fanatic record keeper. And I guess that's why he was working for the New York Archive, because he liked doing that kind of thing. And so he was the first secretary for the Land Trust, and he did just a great job maintaining our records and keeping our records. And he had a lot of contacts in the community with other people that were also interested in preservation. Don Rittner, who was well known in the Capital District, he was interested in archaeology. Has also written books on natural history, books on chemistry and biology. He has 35 books that he published. So he was recruited by Warren. Roger Armstrong was recruited by Warren. Roger Armstrong recruited me to the Land Trust. So we had a lot of SAGE faculty, and we had a lot of RPI faculty. Peg Olson's mentor, thesis mentor, was John Gowdy, who was up on the previous list. And a lot of RPI faculty came onto the board. Dave Akins, a chemist, Stan Bunce, a chemist, Bob LaFleur, a geologist, and we had John Heimke from SAGE, who was a botanist, and I was on the board, Roger was on the board. So we had a heavy load of PhDs. As a matter of fact, we were criticized for that when we came up for accreditation, that, you need to have a more balanced board. And so we recruited people like Carl Sipperly and other people who had other kinds of occupations and actually worked for a living. And John Middleton was a critical person that Roger mentioned. we were all volunteer until I took over, and I was allowed to hire a secretary 4 hours a week at $40. We had a $40 payroll. We paid her $10 an hour. And I had to arrange to have payroll deductions and Social Security taken out and unemployment compensation for an employee that worked only 4 hours a week. That's the bureaucracy. And then we added, we were able to apply for a conservation partnership grant from New York State, from the LTA and New York State, the combined grant program. And also the board, we had to do a match. So the board had to come up with half of the grant as a match to get this award so we could hire a half-time executive director, and the board met the challenge. So we came up with the match, got the grant, got John Middleton. John Middleton had just spent 30 years working for the New York State Office of Parks and Recreation and knew the bureaucracy at the state level, and also was handling the David Rockefeller estate, and a lot of the David Rockefeller estate became state park property. John Middleton was very friendly with the Rockefeller family. So here we had an applicant. We had 3 applicants apply for the half-time job. All 3 of them were highly qualified, but John Middleton had these extra qualifications. Plus, he was a U.S. Army Ranger, paratrooper, whose knees were ruined jumping out of planes in the 1970s. So he was an unusual person with a lot of energy. And when the time came for accreditation, when in 2006 the LTA announced they're going to start the accreditation process, the reason they started the accreditation process was because Senator Grassley was starting to establish a federal government certification process where the U.S. government was going to certify you as a land trust. And the Land Trust Alliance became alarmed at that because it wanted to see the land trust movement stay in private hands. So the Land Trust Alliance decided and convinced the U.S. Congress that it would become the accreditation agency for land trusts in the country. And in 2007 is when we submitted our paperwork, but you had to ask to be part of the first group. There's 1,700 land trusts in the country, and the Land Trust Alliance could only handle a certain amount. They could handle about 3 dozen applicants in that first round. And so you had to ask to be considered. And John Middlebrooks said to me, "We're going to go for it." I said, "John, are you kidding me? We have a secretary that works 4 hours a week, and we have a half-time executive director." The Land Trust Alliance had put out 2 volumes. One volume was 500 pages, and it was the criteria and protocols that you had to meet to be an accredited land trust. And then it had another volume, 500 pages, of good examples of other land trusts in the country. But these other land trusts are like Open Space Institute, Nature Conservancy, and places like that. And I said to John Middleton, "I don't think we can do it. I don't think, I think it would be silly for us to even ask." And John was insistent. John Middleton wanted to be in that first group. And he said, "We can do it." And so I said, "Well, if you can convince the board to do it, we'll go for it." John Middlebrook presented a case to the board that we can go for accreditation. And so we did. Fortunately, we had Roger Armstrong, who had gone through many accreditations at SAGE for the chemistry department. So SAGE was a small college. I had a certified accredited chemistry major and biochemistry major, unusual for a small college. So Roger became the chairman of the accreditation committee, and he set up teams that would handle different aspects, that we had different kinds of things we had to do. And it's amazing how many different things you have to do to become an accredited land trust. You can go to lta.org website and see how difficult it is to be an accredited land trust. So we got accepted in that first pool, and we were the smallest land trust that was accepted into that pool, and we were doing it. We had a budget of about $30,000. other land trusts had $1 million budgets. And we got through the process. They actually sent inspectors to inspect our office. And by the way, we had an office in the Lansingburg Library. We used to meet actually in the Lansingburg Historical Society building before that, because Warren Broderick was a member of the Historical Society, and he arranged for that space. And then he arranged for us to get an office in the Lansingburg Library. So for almost 20 years, up until 2008, actually, we were based in the Lansingburg Library for $100 a month for rent and utilities. And when the library closed for a while and the future of that library is uncertain, I looked for some other space, and I found this space next door here to Brown's Brewing, and so we set up shop here. But that meant our budget now, it was be $400 a month when we started next door here for space and usage. But the point is that with a small budget, to do all we had to do seemed like a horrendous task. But the amazing thing is the board met the challenge. And not only did we have to show the inspectors our office and how we kept our files, they would randomly pick a file and say, take us to this property and show us the boundaries and show us your monitoring reports and show us that you followed all the protocol in the criteria for acquisition. And we were able to document all that because of good record keeping. And so we were the smallest land trust in that first group of 3,000 land trusts that were accredited. And the Land Trust Alliance used us as an example nationally when they would give lectures about becoming accredited. They said, if the Rensselaer Land Trust can do this, you can too. And so we became a model for a lot of the other smaller land trusts in the country. So that's a little bit of the history.
Just two things. As a past president, I think I can speak on behalf of all the presidents here. Whatever success we had while we were serving as president can only have been done with the support and help from everybody else who was on the board with us and all the members and volunteers. And speaking on behalf of the current board of the Land Trust, everything that we've done, we've accomplished to date, everything that we're doing today is we're working on the shoulders of all the people that came before us for the last 30 years. So again, a round of appreciation for all those who set the foundation for what we are today.
Before I leave this slide, I do want to acknowledge our past executive directors, John Middlebrooks, who was mentioned many times, and Christine Young. Thank you. And now we would like to turn your attention to the future of the Land Trust. We've been here 30 years. We intend to be here a lot longer. And we hired John Winter in March of this year. His job is to build on the legacy of what you've heard so far. We're very happy to have John with us.
Thank you, Christina, and welcome everyone. I usually do these walking around and what have you, but there's so many people to thank that I didn't want to miss it. So I wrote it down. My job is to say thank you to past presidents, the founders, and the executive directors who have inspired us all. Thank you to the volunteers, without whose work none of this would be possible. To our donors. No one's mentioned that really tonight, but all the financial support that we've received throughout the years, that when we were struggling and now when we're not, it's really kind of remarkable how far it's all come. The Bluebirds, all 218 of you who have been at this for a decade or more, that's quite an accomplishment. Thank you to the most excellent board and their families who so generously share them with us. We ask a lot. I often say what's kind of remarkable about land trust boards is that you've got a nonprofit organization, and then you've got on top of that a real estate organization, and on top of that you've got this obscure tool called the conservation easement. And anybody who chooses to take on the responsibility of running a land trust has to know them all. And to get to the point where you can be informed and make decisions about land deals that essentially create a protected property forever is a very heady thing to do. And all of us, I hope, appreciate the hard work that the board puts in to make this possible. I want to make a special call out to the 30th Anniversary Planning Committee. Sally Lawrence over there, thank you so much for all your hard work, to make this all possible. Christina and Nick and Tom Phillips, and especially to, where is she? Where's Julie? Julie is, you make my job easy. I mean, thank you. It's quiet and it's silent, and she does her work with amazing grace. And I know all of you deal with her, a lot at RLT, and she's just a gem. So I just want to thank you for all that you do. This has been the third of a series of big events that we've done over the last few months, and you have just organized them remarkably. So thank you. I also want to thank Eric for the video and Fred for taking pictures. It's really wonderful to have this history. Bill captured, I think, for us where we've come. And it's great that we're going to have this for future people to see. Hopefully we can put it on the website or make it available to people so they can better understand kind of the 30 years and the legacy. And it is not lost on me that that legacy comes to me now. Strange enough, this is going to sound funny, but when you were talking about Peg, I am a ecological economist by trade. So if you want to know what that is, I'm happy to tell you later. But Bill, you had it mostly right. This is my third stint as a executive director. I ran the land trust in Cooperstown and the one in Woodstock before that. So I come to this with some experience on land protection, and I hope to make it valuable here. My great joy is that I can run a land trust in my hometown. My family moved to Troy a few years ago for my daughter's education, and it's really great to be here now working amongst you and to be able to protect land in my hometown. So it's really sweet to be here. Quickly, because we're running out of time, my job also, beyond the thank yous, is to tell you where we're going. First, I always love this part, our gifts to us. We're about to protect a 44-acre parcel in Buskirk, a gift of the Johnson family, which is on the Hoosick River, a heron rookery with beautiful walking trails that we hope to invite you to next spring when it's all set up. So if Paul was here, I would thank you. Paul Schroeder has been directing the hard work on making that acquisition a reality, but it's always fun to tell you and be able to invite you to new lands that we protect. So again, a thank you to the Johnson family who so generously are donating their beloved parcel. Their parents bought it years ago and lived on it for many years until their passing, and the 3 children have generously donated it to RLT, so the world can enjoy it. There are also a number of other land acquisitions in our queue. I can't tell you about them because they're confidential until they happen, but we're very excited that there's a number of other properties there. Where we're going. The work of protecting land is just part of what needs to happen. A big effort will be made to tell the story. We need more people, more younger people, more engaged young people in land conservation. The next generation awaits our guidance and mentorship as we think about who takes over after we do. Part of that is an understanding of how the young people of today gather information. It's social media and its video and its engagement. It's getting people out from behind their computer screens and getting them out on the land. So what you're going to see from us, we hope as we go forward, is more visibility for RLT, more partnering. Thank you, Jim Bonesteel, for joining us tonight from RPA. We're embarking on significant new efforts to collaborate with RPA and with other land conservation organizations like ASA and the important birding areas in Audubon and everybody else around here who cares very deeply about what we do. We're working here in Troy on hiking trails. We're working on water sampling and fish advisory programs. Is Fran still here? Fran Martino. Hello, Fran. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing in this community, and we look forward to continuing our association with you. And just so you know, we're thinking about all this and how it gets done. As Nick said, we're working on a conservation plan that will identify and prioritize for us the special places that we want to add to our gifts to us. Does anyone remember a television program that used to run, or a part of a television program on Sunday morning with Charles Kuralt? Remember that? He used to do this wonderful piece at the end of every year. It was something like called Our Gifts to Us, and they would just take a camera crew out to a nature preserve, and he wouldn't speak. It would just be the sounds of the place. And over the years, the assembled properties were kind of remarkable. You know, the places that we decided for one reason or another were important and valuable and that we cared about. Our gifts to us. I like to think that that's what we do. Year in, year out, from landscape scale to very small places in our midst, we pick out the special places that are worthy of protection, and this fine board and everybody in this room supports that. So with that, I'll stop. As always, we invite you to our outings and events. Please join us for hikes. We have a new wintertime hiking series that we're starting up this year. The first one, I think, is December 30th, and they follow for the subsequent months. You can see it on our website, the schedule. Please join us for that. I hope to see you out there. And thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of you for your support as volunteers, donors, and supporters in the community. We are very grateful and look forward to the next 30 years with you. So with that, I will turn it back over to Christina so she can close our program.
We intend to be here for 30 more years, but we can only do it with your help. So thank you. And again, I'll remind you, those pint glasses, those natural history books, those note cards, those are our thank you to you for your support over the long haul. And enjoy the rest of the evening.